Welcome to Crushing Kayfabe. This is Jason Garish, and tonight's show we're going to talk a little bit about some of the similarities that I've seen between TNA and AEW, and some of the dissimilarities, and whether or not these can be game breaker, let's say, or the downfall of AEW. But we'll talk about that in a minute. First, that kind of being so close to Thanksgiving, of course, WWE had the Survivor Series, which is the first time in a long time I didn't get to see, but my co-host, who unfortunately isn't here right now, Matt Reeves, got to watch that and gave me kind of a little bit of a rundown of what happened. So if we go down the card, it looks like it was Becky versus Charlotte. According to Matt, this was a really good match, which makes sense. I mean, Becky and Charlotte both are really great women's wrestlers, so he gives it the match of the night. So that doesn't surprise me in the slightest. And Becky gets a win over Charlotte in that. I guess it was the Raw versus SmackDown match after that. Seth Rollins wins it for Team Raw. And then we have the Rock's 25th anniversary Royal Rumble? Or Royal Battle Royale, sorry. And I guess Omos was the winner of that. So, interesting. I guess they're going to give him a big push. That should be kind of interesting. And then the next match was a tag match. I don't see which teams are involved. I know RK Bro took the win, but I'm not sure. He didn't put down who that was against. Unfortunately, I don't have the card in front of me. But it looks like the 5v5 with Team Raw versus SmackDown. Team Raw wins that one, and then we had the Big E versus Roman Reigns, which is, I know Matt was looking forward to that. He's a fan of both of them, so it looks like Roman won that, but he gave that match about a strong B. So, but apparently the whole show wasn't great, but there were a few good moments, he said. So I don't know. Like I said, I haven't seen the show yet, so we'll have to kind of see if I can watch that and give my own opinion on what happened. Unfortunately, like I said, it's the first time I missed Survivor Series in a very long time. So, but hey, let's get into tonight's topic if we don't mind here. All right, at the debut of AEW, I did notice some striking similarities between them and TNA, which some good, some not so good. Hopefully these won't be the downfall of AEW. Hopefully they can overcome some of these things, but I did notice some similarities, some dissimilarities. I'm kind of going to discuss all of those in tonight's show. I mean, the biggest pitfall that I noticed immediately was the hiring of a slew of ex-WWE wrestlers. You came onto the scene with Cody Rhodes, Chris Jericho, etc. I mean, obviously, when you start a new promotion, you're going to need somebody with some name recognition. But the problem that I saw with TNA was they were hiring pretty much any WWE wrestler that came out of WWE and giving them a push pretty much right away, putting them over some of their homegrown stars, which I see a huge issue with that. I'm really big problem with that because I think it diminishes your promotion. It makes WWE look that much better. I mean, like I said, TNA did this with Kurt Angle, a bunch of other people, and then when Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff came in, that's when things really started to slide for TNA because they took over a lot of creative, and the product started to look like a WWE. Yeah, let's see how many W's we can throw in there. A WWE light product at that point. They had done away with the 6-side ring. They had done away with, they had diminished the X Division, which was one of the things that had made TNA stand out and separate, and especially visually with the 6-side ring and the X Division was something that you noticed when flipping through channels, and it stood out, and it set the product aside and made it look very much different than other products that were available at the time. So I'm hoping that AEW doesn't fall in that trap. You know, they've obviously made a lot of waves by hiring CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, a bunch of others that have shown up on the show, but so far they've been doing a good job of using them to put over some younger, homegrown wrestlers, and I hope they continue to, because if they don't, and they just put over CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, whatever, over on their own talent, it's going to make the product look weak, and I don't want to see them do that. So I'm hoping that they continue the trend to use them to enhance a lot of their own talent rather than just kind of skyrocketing right up to the top, which TNA a lot of times kind of did, and it really made some of the guys that were homegrown, like AJ Styles and Bobby Roode, and the list goes on, kind of look weaker, and I'm hoping that AEW does not go down that path, because that's a recipe for failure right there. I mean, another kind of startling similarity that we missed, or that I saw, was the fact that they're both funded by billionaire/billionaire corporations that had no previous wrestling experience. Now, the exception to that rule is kind of TNA, because TNA did start with Jeff and Jerry Jarrett, but when they really started to take off was with Dixie Carter and her parent corporation, was it Panda Energy, I believe, and that's the era of TNA that I'm going to focus on now, because I kind of consider that for lack of a better term, kind of the heyday of TNA. Because before they became Impact Wrestling, and that was the period between, I believe, 2003 and 2016, in which Dixie was in charge of the company. I mean, there are some similarities between Dixie and Tony Khan. Obviously they're both quite rich. I don't think Dixie was a billionaire, but she had a lot of money behind her. When she was asked by Jeff Jarrett to take a stake in the company and help him out, because a financial backer of his had dropped out of the project, and he needed money desperately. So that's kind of where Dixie came in. But yeah, I'm hoping that that's where the similarities end. I mean, both of them have. Tony Khan appears to be a true lifelong fan of wrestling, which Dixie was not when she came into the business. So I'm hoping that sets the two apart. But the two of them have displayed kind of markish behavior, which has been the detriment to both of them, I think. So hopefully that's as far as that goes. I'm hoping that we don't see any more similarities there. I mean, they both had primetime cable spots. That's obviously a similarity there. They both pretty much once again, I'm comparing the quote-unquote heyday of TNA to current-day AEW, but they both seem to lack a singular, succinct booking by creative. They rely heavily on their talent to book, and that could be an issue. I know that AEW doesn't give total creative control to any of their talent, which I'm very grateful for, at least they have somebody to funnel their ideas through. But right now, that person appears to be Tony Khan, and not a lot of other people. Which, from what I understand, with TNA, Dixie had the final say, and there was some. Nobody really knew who to report to in that organization, so they don't really know who really didn't know who was in charge. And the other point that I'd like to make is something I've noticed between the two was allowing real life cliques to kind of occur within the locker room, and specifically within AEW. You look at a group which on the air is the Elite, but in reality they're kind of a clique behind the scenes also. So that could really hinder the progress of a lot of the younger talent, a lot of the people trying to get up. I just hope it doesn't turn to a situation similar to what happened back in WCW and back in TNA, where some of the older talent refuses to drop a title to so-and-so or lose to some of the younger talent, because that could definitely be an issue, especially when, going into a situation like that for a young wrestler is intimidating enough, but then when you have a bunch of individuals that are kind of ganged up together, that can be even more intimidating and set your development back, I should say, a lot, I would think. So that was another similarity that I'm kind of noticing between the two, and that I hope the trend kind of ends soon. But another thing I noticed was that there was a singular star having too much influence on creative, it seems like. With AEW, it seems like Cody Rhodes. With TNA, at one point in time, it was Jeff Jarrett. So, right now Cody is facing the backlash of that. He's appearing very John Cena-ish in a lot of ways. I know that some people don't disagree heavily with that, but I can definitely see it when he comes out there as a babyface and gets booed. He kind of gets that Super Cena vibe when he goes out there, and I think that's going to do a lot of harm to the product in general if they don't either turn him heel or do something to change that. I think Tony Khan, he's commented it in the past, and he doesn't believe it's an issue because he kind of approaches it the way that WWE viewed Cena, and that's kind of disheartening because a lot of people put up with a lot of years of Cena kind of being Super Cena, and it turns some serious fans off. I don't know if that's going to happen with Cody Rhodes, but it seems to be hindering his progress. It's kind of weird watching a babyface get booed out of the building. But now another thing I'm noticing is owners being overly friendly to talent. You look at Tony Khan and you look at Dixie, and they were both buddy with the talent. And at the end of the day, they're the bosses. So that kind of... I know like Vince has his favorites and he tries to be more of like a grandfatherly type figure, whereas I think Tony and Dixie kind of look at each other on almost equal footing as some of these people. And I'm not saying, everyone's equal, obviously, but these people have a lot more experience in business than they do, and I don't want to see that change anybody's judgment or kind of make some decisions based on that. And obviously it's human nature to want to see your friends do well, want to see your friends get put over. So if he's too friendly to the talent, yeah, he's going to have his favorites, and he's going to have people that he wants to see do well, and that could be an issue, because that kind of impairs your judgment and doesn't allow you to objectively look at the talent and objectively judge the talent and assess where they are in their development. So that could be a real big problem if Tony Khan doesn't. I don't want to say distance himself, but yeah, it could be an issue down the road if he goes one way or the other. And another thing I've noticed, which they both, Dixie Carter and Tony Khan, have become on-screen characters of themselves, and man, I mean, Dixie at first was extremely awkward, and Tony Khan has been extremely awkward. So I can kind of see some similarities in their performances. I don't know if it's out of a need to be there. Personally, I think they should maybe get. I mean, obviously, the Dixie Carter situation is done and gone. She did her damage, and she's no longer. I don't even know if she owns any more stake in the company, but with Tony Khan, I mean, my biggest recommendation would be to take a retired wrestler and make him a GM. That way, that eliminates you from having to go on the air. Take like a Mick Foley or someone that's retired, even a Kurt Angle at this point, and make them a GM. Make them a viable GM. They're people that have been on television, that are charismatic, that have been those roles before, and they can do very well in those roles. Whereas that's not a situation that Tony Khan has ever had to be in. And the inexperience shows every time he's out there. It looks awkward. I mean, it was good during certain events, such as the Brody Lee tribute show. It was necessary, and it was very heartfelt, and it just added to the emotion of the event. But I don't want to see him become a regular character on television, but they do need some kind of GM in there to go out there and lay the law down, because right now it's at the point where the announcers will get, oh, we've got a message from Tony Khan, or we've done this, and it looks disingenuous. It looks kind of fake, and I know, yeah, wrestling is fake, whatever, but it doesn't help to suspend disbelief or kayfabe at all in any way when that happens. It's happening way too quickly, and it's awkward and weird. And like I said, it was kind of the way, having Dixie Carter become a character was kind of awkward and weird too. So that's where I see some similarities, and I'm hoping that, like I said, my recommendation would be to pick up one of these retired wrestlers and make them a fake figurehead on the show. And I think that would alleviate a lot off of Tony Khan's shoulders, and I think that would you wouldn't have a situation that turns out badly like it did with Dixie Carter, wow, and TNA. That's just my own opinion. Neither one of them is was owned, I should say, by a publicly traded company. Now, this can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing. Obviously, WWE is a publicly traded corporation, meaning that they have shareholders that they have to answer to. In some ways, this dilutes the product. In some ways, it helps keep the product somewhat consistent and keeps them on their game. I mean, obviously, one of the main driving forces behind WWE television becoming PG television was the fact that it was publicly traded. So they had to answer to shareholders in meetings. They couldn't have anything that was too risque or offensive, because they would lose advertisers, they would lose, their stock price would fall. So it can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. I think with TNA it was probably a bad thing because it allowed things to get out of hand and out of control creatively, and just go down a downward spiral. I mean, one of the things that AEW has that it kind of sets itself apart from WWE is the fact that it can do some things that WWE cannot. It's, I believe, a TV-14 show, which means it can go, they can swear on there, they can bleed on there, they can blade, which, WWE has their no blading policy. So they can make things a little bit more adult oriented on AEW. In this particular case, that's a good thing, as long as it doesn't get out of hand. Because I think you always have to have some kind of boundaries and something to kind of ground you and not allow you to get too out of control with some of your booking. So I mean, like I said, it's a hindrance and a good thing all at once, which is weird. And in order for AEW to exceed, I think they need to accentuate that. But still, thankfully, they still have to report to a major television network. So hopefully that helps them in that sense, helps them rein in a little bit, because I don't want to see Nick Gage doing death matches on the show every week, obviously. And that could definitely hurt them, because that's not something I want to watch in front of my kids. So it's a double-edged sword. It really is. I mean, like I said, that what makes the product of that WWE is putting out right now unappealing to me is the fact that it's kind of milquetoast, watered down, bland, PG kind of, which I don't want to see things offensive. I don't want to see, but at the same time, I want to see things creative, which AEW is doing a little bit better right now than WWE is. But like I mentioned, that neither one of them was or is a publicly traded company. And my next point was kind of, I'll backtrack a little, but neither one has a commissioner, like I'd mentioned before, and that kind of gets into what I was talking about with the similarities between Dixie Carter. Wow, I cannot speak that. I apologize. Dixie Carter and Tony Khan. One thing that I do see in both of them that is a common thread is that they both don't seem to have a clearly defined hierarchy, which I know in TNA that was a gigantic problem. No one knew who to report to. Now, maybe AEW is a little more clearly defined, but the fact that they're not a publicly traded company, I can't really go online and accurately look up any of these things. I don't really know exactly who is reporting to whom and who's in charge of what. The only thing that I know is what I hear through podcasts, hear through media scrums, hear through public announcements from AEW, and so I really don't know what the established hierarchy is. It doesn't seem to be that one. It just seems like everything's falling through Tony Khan, and that's not a good thing. You need some talent relations in the way, which his son JR does great. So now that he's going to be stepping more out of the announcing role, maybe that's his position. Put him into more of a talent relations type of role, because that's what he's done in the past. He's done it great in the past, so why not put him there? And like I said, have more of an established hierarchy. I know in TNA that was a gigantic issue, because people literally did not know who to talk to when they had an issue. Did not know who to go to with problems. So now that, Tony Khan's going to become much, much busier, he's not going to be able to individually address every situation. He's going to need people underneath him that can respond to those situations. So that's definitely something that needs to develop and be more clearly defined in the future. Now, here's another interesting point. I'm just kind of trying to read my own handwriting. Both of them existed through pay-per-views prior to television, which is another kind of odd similarity between the two, And the only reason I bring these things up is because history does repeat itself, and I don't want to see that happen with AEW. I want to see the promotion go on for years and years. But they have that possibility, and there is that danger of them going down the same road, and I don't want to see that. So that's another kind of startling similarity. I mean, they've been another similarity they had is they share their wrestlers with other promotions, much like TNA, and that was one of the things that kind of bothered me about TNA was I could see a particular wrestler on TNA, and then I could go to a Northeast Wrestling event or another event and see that same wrestler. And that is something you don't see with WWE. They have exclusive contracts. I know that's something that Tony Khan touts as being a good thing, and he's been promoting that. I don't know that it is. I mean, from what I saw with TNA, it tended to dilute the product a lot because these guys were not loyal to TNA. They were just going wherever the paycheck was, and they were just kind of showing up. Sometimes they would no-show events because of that, because they got offered more money at another event. So that's where you run the danger with that. I mean, I don't see that currently with AEW, but if they don't sign some more exclusive deals, you might see that down the road. I mean, I see Lance Archer. I see. I know Thunder Rosa is going to be coming to Memphis soon, and it's like, well, why do I have to go to an AEW event if I can watch these wrestlers at my local independent promotions? And that's kind of a weird thing. Like I said, I know Tony Khan likes that idea, but I watched it kind of bite TNA in the butt in the past, so I'm hoping that doesn't become an issue down the road. But I do like their relationships with Impact, with AAA, with New Japan. That does kind of make things interesting. But the thing I like about that, though, is the crossover, because now you have this star coming over from Impact and showing up on TV, or this star coming over from New Japan, but it's not an all-the-time occurrence. It's a big deal when it happens, so I do like that. So hopefully they'll continue to keep those boundaries strong and continue to kind of keep things the way they are, I should say. Another similarity is I noticed there's a very rabid Mark fan base that tends to kind of ignore the truth a lot of times, and I know with TNA and AEW, like I said, the fans can. TNA back in the heyday they were, and now with AEW, you've got your very rabid fans, which your hardcore AEW fans, which some of these guys need a serious dose of reality. And they can't continue to ignore some of the facts that are right in front of their face, which tends to happen. Like I said, you have these AEW zealots that will downplay any type of criticism of the company, and if the company is to thrive and grow, they need some criticism. They need to fix their wrongs. They need to work on mistakes and work on things. They can't have these zealot fans that are just going out there, because they didn't last with TNA, and they won't last with AEW. You also need the casual fans. You also need the middle of the road fans. You can't just have the zealot fan base that's giving you a small percentage of money, and you need everything to help you through. Now, it's not all bad, though. I've seen some dissimilarities between the two companies, which I'm happy to say. Like, for one, I know Tony Khan was a wrestling fan before ever owning the company, which is very evident. Dixie Carter didn't really know much about wrestling beforehand. She had never been involved in business. At least Tony Khan has been a diehard wrestling fan for a very, very long time. So I'm hoping that helps draw some lines, but it could be a hindrance too. So I'm definitely hoping that helps them. Khan started the company. He created the company. Obviously, Dixie did not. So there's some dissimilarities. There's some differences between the two there. I mean, TNA was created by Jeff and Jerry Jarrett, and and Dixie did not have a hand until later on when they needed money, when a backer had pulled out of the deal, and Dixie came on. But so that I think is one thing that Tony Khan does have a little bit of a leg up on. At least he created the company and has a much more of a vested interest, I think, than Dixie Carter had in TNA. And he's a fan, so there are multiple shows for AEW, which is cool. There's Rampage, there's Dynamite, and there are the YouTube shows. So they do have more time on television to develop storylines, which I'm hoping that they will do soon, because they've been bad at developing storylines. I mean, great wrestling with minimal storylines kind of thing, which is TNA did at 1.2 and didn't work. But yeah, I'm hoping that they'll use those times wisely to develop and convey storylines and to proceed with the storylines. Use their multiple platforms to do so. AEW has a much bigger network affiliation, obviously, than TNA did. They were originally with Spike, which does not have anywhere near the viewership of TNT or TBS. So that's one leg up that they have. I mean, just this TBS deal alone is going to put them, I believe, into 1 million more households than what they currently have with TNT. So that's going to help them down the road. That's one difference that I do see that hopefully will help AEW along the line. Not to mention AEW has affiliations through the Khan family with other sports teams, so there's more opportunities to cross-promote through those sports teams. They can run billboards in at Jaguars games. They can do things that TNA could not, because they have more of those avenues available to them. Another thing I noted that is a pretty good difference too is AEW has wrestlers with very successful podcasts. This is something that could be a great cross-promotional tool. They've got Chris Jericho, they've got Colt Cabana, who had established wrestling podcasts that have a very wide audience base. So that's something that I see a difference that could help them. Obviously, podcasts weren't as widespread as they are now, but that's something that could help them down the road too. TNA had a streaming service. That's a difference that I see that kind of hinders AEW. I mean, really, TNA had a streaming service that was ahead of its time. I mean, I was a subscriber at one point, and then I don't know why they discontinued that. I thought that was insane because it was a good deal, and they had a bunch of library on there, and that's kind of why I was hoping that Tony Khan would gobble up one of these in these promotions, such as ROH or NWA or so forth, to get kind of a library that they could put on video, convert onto video, and stream. So they could offer their own streaming service at a discounted rate. So that's something that I do see TNA did kind of have a leg up on a lot of promotions. I just think at the time nobody was ready for it, and it was a little too much too early kind of thing, because it obviously did not succeed, which is unfortunate. I really liked the service, and wish it had gone further. But one thing I noticed, which is different with AEW, that I really love, is the use of licensed music. When Moxley comes out to Wild Thing, or Jungle Boy comes out to his theme music, or CM Punk comes out to Cult of Personality, that is great. I mean, that's something that WWE unfortunately doesn't do, and something that TNA didn't do. They did almost exclusively in-house music for their wrestlers, and I'm very glad that AEW does that. I think it's great that they do it. So yeah, those are some of the similarities and differences between the two companies. I hope that by pointing out the similarities, I don't cast a pessimistic shadow on them. I mention these things sheerly because I don't want them to go down the same road that TNA did, that morphed into Impact. Because I do enjoy the show, and right now it's one of the few wrestling products I'm actually watching. So I'm hoping that they don't go down that road with that TNA did, and that's why I'm pointing these things out. So that's it, as far as that goes. But yeah, let's kind of close the show out on those thoughts, because that was really all I had for today. I'd like to send a shout out to Lucky Lady Candles. Go find them on Pinterest and I mean, not Pinterest. Wow. Go find them on Facebook and Etsy. I should say, not Pinterest. Wow. And get some great candles from them. I'd like to send a shout out to Then and Now Flea Market, downtown Trenton, Tennessee. You can go down there and you can get one of my CDs, or you can get a bunch of products that my wife handmade, which are really cool looking stuff. And there's a bunch of really cool vendors that have their booths set up at Then Now. So go down there and check them out and buy some stuff, and tell them that Jason sent you. And tell them that Crushing Kayfabe sent you. All right, and once again, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Have a safe trip if anybody's going out to visit relatives or whatnot. But yeah, happy Thanksgiving, and God bless everybody, and talk to you next week. Thank you.